Welcome back to Real Surf Stories. Following the deepest roots of aerial surfing take us all the way back to the early 1960s, when surfer skateboarder Herbie Fletcher started riding wave-shaped, transitioned swimming pools. With the invention of urethane wheels, skaters started taking to the air. The actual story of aerial surfing itself started in the early 1970s with a surfer skateboarder named Kevin Reed, who visualized airs by drawing flip books, then took it to his backyard ramp and then to the water.
Where did you do your first air skateboarding?
In my ramps on my backyard.
When was your first air surfing?
Been doing air since '72 on a 7.6 pintail, single fin. Yeah. Richard Schmidt, everybody's in the water, Robert Waldemeyer. I come off the point and clear that section. First time I've actually figured it's majorly possible with my flip book and looking at how the wind is, how the currents go.
The first air I ever saw somebody accomplish was Kevin Reed in 1974, and I'll never forget it. There's an image still in my head of him soaring above a middle peak wave, about a 4-foot wave, with the lighthouse in the background and the setting sun. He was silhouetted, and just, it blew my mind. I've never seen anybody in that position ever until that point. And to have him land and right away, it just blew my mind. And I got to know Kevin, in high school. So, 74, 73, his mom was actually putting on these little contests, during that time period. And I used to hang out with him, and he was really futuristic. He'd sit down there and he'd sketch like maneuvers that he was going to pull off in the water. I remember going to his house, and he showed me this picture that he sketched out of like a oil roller, like what Barney ended up doing, like a pipe, like the Barney rolls that he would do inside the barrel.
I remember there was a time I was surfing with Kevin up at Waddell, and he was doing what Kevin does, which was just rip. I'm paddling out, and the set comes through, probably 4, 5, 6 feet, whatever, and Kevin drops in. When he comes down, and he's side slipping, and he's holding his rail, and he's 100% committed, but he's sliding down, and he's to the left, so he's backside, and he's sliding down, and then all of a sudden his board catches, and then he gets thrown up and over the lip, with the lip. So he did like a barrel roll, and landed it. And I'm paddling out, and I'm like screaming, obviously. And then he pulls it off and kind of squirrels out of it, but he made it, right, whatever. And I was just like, he paddled back out, and he's like, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I saw it. I was paddling out." And he's like, "Can you believe I pulled that one?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I meant to do that." And I was like, "Oh, bullshit." But he pulled it. Who cares if he meant to or not? But it was one of the coolest things that I saw a dude do on his surfboard. And it wasn't cool. It was insane.
Flip books are simple. I'd start from the back, right? Using a pencil. Draw that wave. Hold it down. Draw it a little further down the line. Hold it down, draw it a little further down the line. Then go back to the beginning and put the trail in that I'm looking for. So at that point, the flip book's 100 pages. From back to front. Just like watching a cartoon or doing 1,000 frames per second movie.
You watch it enough time that in your mind you can visualize yourself?
Visualize it. And draw it to a certain point where I understood that there's no way to land it unless you're following that wave. Learning that theory was too simple to understand. It was like, after the flip books, it was too normal for me.
Who else was doing airs on a surfboard?
No one.
No one. Who do you think was the second person to do air surfing?
Davy Schmidt.
The first aerial I did was at Rocky Point in 1975. I was on a 6-foot CI, single fin. So I remember taking off and I'm like, God, this wind is really, it's holding me back. But then I got a bigger wave and I was going really fast. And I hit the lip and I was trying to do like a regular, like big carve, but the board and my body just came up and the wind just held it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then just landed it on the flats. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm looking around to see if anybody saw it. You know how surfers are. Totally. Did you see that? And I'm like, so I just kept trying it after that. And I completed one that same day, but the rest were flops.
Do you remember the first air you saw?
Like in person?
Yeah.
Maybe it was some Davy Smith, probably in person, I think. The little spot that we used to surf in Santa Barbara was a little beach break, so it was kind of ideal. Yeah, I remember seeing Kevin Reed in a magazine doing air, I think it was Surfing Magazine. And, I don't remember the year, but I remember that for sure. It was definitely something different. Yeah.
That opened your mind to like try it, or was it just seem like some other thing?
Yes, it was interesting because it was like a skateboard thing. It's like skateboarding. And I was really big into skateboarding at the time. I guess was it late 70s or kind of mid 70s. And so that was definitely a skate move, for sure.
In surfing, it just kind of evolved, the whole aerial thing, and it evolved from skateboarding because at that time I was skateboarding, Kevin Reed, I believe, was skateboarding, and Matt Kechele was skateboarding. And the big thing was getting coping in pools, the Dogtown crew. And then people started getting air out of the pool. So it just seemed like a natural progression there. And I was like, oh, it's just going to go in the air.
By 1977, skaters were taking to the air all over the place. Ed DeRosa got the surf community together. Then we all built SoCal in 1977. And before it was open to the public, Kevin was already making a history with his futuristic moves.
Third bowl of the receiver run, you get all this speed and you do like a ollie to lip slide.
The air to lip slide, if it wasn't for my skateboards, 36 inches long, propped up that high off of tracker trucks, okay, that wouldn't have been possible on that round surface.
By the time the park opened, he was mastering his airs, grabbing and not grabbing, and influenced a young group of skaters, including myself. Not only in the park, but in the water.
TR, you'd show up at the gate sometimes in my backyard, and usually if I wasn't there, no one skated those ramps. Or my mom would basically come out the back door and stick a gun in your face and tell you to wait till I came home. You know those stories. I'm ambidextrous. So basically it doesn't matter. I can go left, front side, or back side. I can go right, front side, or back side.
I remember seeing you get pitted at the harbor backside in front of the rocks. And I'll never forget witnessing you land 2 lofty ollies on one wave at the river mouth. And the second was switch. How did you do that?
I had a tendency to do, because of that left went down the line so fast, I'd take off regular foot. The first area you saw is backside. Then landing and switching and doing it front side. One of the things, TR, is I didn't look up to anybody. Okay? I surfed with Sean, Rabbit, I surfed with all of them. Big wave riders. Basically bottom turns, a coaster here and there, a roundhouse, you know, maybe a tube ride. But improvising off of that, it was like, I got bored.
You know, I'd heard that Kechele was doing them, and I heard that Kevin Reed was doing them right during the time I was doing them, and so it was a cool era because there was no way really to communicate unless you went, you know, to that person and you were able to talk.
It was so many different individuals, and they were in their own little pockets of energy, isolated from the other pockets. We're talking no internet, no computers.
I surfed with Kechele in Newport during that era, and yeah, he was busting the fins out.
Bruce started talking about Alan Galfan. That's what really clicked for me at Sebastian Inlet when Bruce was describing like how Alan would hit this hip and then kind of tail high, transfer the board to point back down and ride back down the transition smoothly and make it look good, you know, with style. And so for me, I was just like right away. I was like, you know, that same day I was trying those at Sebastian. You know, I had a twin fin. You know, I was able to get this speed, and right away I was doing them. And Bruce kept encouraging me to keep doing them. I was 16 at the time.
March and April 1979, Keck is on the twin fins that Lore had shaped for these skateboard maneuvers. They started out on the shoulder, and they were little shoulder hops. But the idea was, the goal was to see if you get the fins completely out, do an aerial, land it, and ride out of it. And so he was doing it. He was consistently landing them, consistently riding out of it.
Skateboarding was taking off, you know, and yeah. And so as same with you, it all connected at that time. It all made sense to me to kind of start fooling around and experimenting out in the water and figuring out what I could do, translating certain skate tricks to surfing. And this is it. This is where surfing's going, you know. It's just a matter of time. So all of that is a culmination of like really what inspired me. And Sebastian Inlet is just kind of a no-brainer. The way that wedge is, so you'd be riding on the left, and all of a sudden the wedge would just be coming at you, you know, kind of at a 45-degree angle. All you had to do is just come off the bottom, hit that thing, and, you know, and just get the tail, transfer, and you could ride out pretty smooth off. Right away, I started doing those airs.
Kechele started doing aerials, just boom, straight up, boom, popping it out. And they just got better with time.
And then the Stubbies event came to town. And then they brought it to Sebastian Inlet, the very first one in 1981. All the best surfers from up and down the East Coast. Yeah, I was 18 years old. I was going to cut my teeth against all the best guys, you know, at my home break. The event was getting ready to start, TR, right? And it was pretty heavy. Leon Johnson was the judge at the Stubbies, and he pulled like a sidebar sort of conference together with the judges, and it kind of blew my mind. Like, there were some surfers kind of on the outskirts of this little powwow meeting the judges were having, and Leon stuck his neck out. He was saying that aerials are going to be the future of surfing. And, and he's saying, just like the skateboarders, he goes, it's here, it's now, it's happening. And we need to start scoring them, and I was kind of like, in respect to all my peers and all the other surfers that I really looked up to, I was kind of like shy and kind of like, whoa, like kind of blown away. Like I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. I was really impressed that somebody, that Jeremy Johnson's father had that insight and really stuck his neck out, like at a big event like that. Like they could have just said, you're fired, you're out of here, like it put a really lot of pressure on me because it was like the waves were pumping and, and it was like, well, and I didn't get clarity to like, are they going to be scoring errors or not? To do errors proper, you need like the good wins, found myself in the finals, against Pat Mulhern and, the winds, the swell was dying down a little bit, it kind of got a little bit junkier. There was like thousands of people on the beach, and it was just like crazy pressure, but in my mind, I was like, I'm kind of known, like already kind of come down this path. I'm kind of known to be like an air guy, and I'm going to do some airs in this final. And I sent you the shots where I do 2 little airs on one wave. That was in the final. And they announced that I won. It was pretty special.
The significance of Keck winning this contest can't be understated, as it took another 3 full decades for airs to be part of the judging criteria.
I had heard about Holman kind of shortly after the Stubbies, I want to say. And, hey, there's this other kid in town. He's doing airs like you, Keck, da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, cool, and I want to check it out. And then finally I'd seen Holman doing them. And he was doing some really cool stuff. And he was focused on that and that only. Yeah, I was stoked for him, and I was stoked to see that it inspired somebody else to pick up those rings, that baton, and run with it as well.
And Matt Kechele started doing these skateboard tricks in surfing out on a wave. One of the tricks he would do that he was known for was called a Keck flip. He would paddle fin first and ollie his board 3-4 feet. I mean, how the kid could ollie that high on a surfboard was amazing. But he would ollie his board 3-4 feet out of the water and rotate the board under his feet and land on it and keep going. Just one of many aerial tricks this kid was doing. He was mesmerizing. I would sit on the beach for hours and study and take note and try to copy what he did. And back then, ollie hops, as ridiculous as they came to be in many people's eyes, it was the start of aerials for us on the East Coast. I can't speak for anyone else. I was so young and naive back then. I didn't travel. We didn't have the internet. We were very limited to what was going on in the world. We could only see what was going on in front of us in those days. And what Keck was doing was revolutionary. He would ollie his board 3-4 feet out of the water, land it, and keep going. And he would do these front side laybacks under the lip, and the lip would throw over him, and he'd stand up and come out of it. And he was doing things no one else would do. And that got me interested in aerials because everyone else looked the same to me. So I would study him and study him. I started mimicking his maneuvers, and I started out with the ollie hop, of course, and then my ollie hops got higher and higher. And I noticed that by ollie hopping my board high, the board would almost rotate into a 180, and then I would land it and spin it back around regular and keep going. And it didn't take me long. This all went down in 1980. So I told my friends I wanted to rotate it all the way around, a complete ollie hop reverse, land it and keep going. No one believed me. Everyone thought I was full of garbage, and I got made fun of for even bringing it up. And But I started working on it, and sure enough, in the spring of 1980, at the south end of Paradise Beach Park, which is a very well-known surf spot here in Brevard County, a friend of mine just happened to be videotaping with a VHS recorder, which was new technology back then, 1980. He just happened to be on the beach, and I ollie hopped, took off on a chest high wave. I'm goofy foot, took off on a left, chest high, got a bunch of speed, was looking for a chop in the face of the wave that would launch me higher than normal. I hit this chop, I rotated, full rotation, landed it and kept going. The beach went nuts, everyone in the water went nuts. I couldn't believe I actually pulled it off after months of working on this. I went straight in, looked at the camera, and had my buddy, Greg Mashai, play it back for me. And I looked at it 3 or 4 times, memorized it, went back out and continued working on the ollie hop. And there were some tricks of the trade that I learned. If you do the ollie hop up high on the face of the wave, you can get higher and rotate easier all the way around, and et cetera, et cetera. Matt Kechele was the first person I ever saw do aerials in person in Florida. I started copying him. And then others started copying whoever. I don't know if they were copying me or copying Matt or copying Jay Smith, or I don't know. I can't speak for these other surfers. But we had a gentleman by the name of Kevin Elliott, and he could actually do an ollie hop air reverse 360 probably a few years after I started doing them. And he was pretty good at them. Charlie Haycheck, of course, he was doing aerials. And there's a number of other people that started doing them years later. But Keck was the first. I mean, he was a pioneer.
And of course, he went through the whole thing. Silly Keck, tricks are for kids. And it was all the guys, it was all the pros who were full on top 8, top 10 in pro surfing. None of them did aerials. And suddenly this young upstart is here doing aerial. Oh, silly Keck. There was a lot of guys that were looking for their own survival in a tough sport. And it seemed natural for them to criticize and to try to subject. And they kind of got a thing going that kind of suppressed aerials to a certain degree.
You know, and Davey Smith, I greatly admire like how he stuck with it and like started doing like all kinds of other sort of skate maneuvers. And you know, like I was watching some of his old footage. He was doing like a corrupt flip with the closeout El Rolo. Jimmy Medico got me hooked up with Davey, and he took me surfing, and Jimmy documented a couple sessions we had, and we were kind of trying to push our surfing and see where it was going to go. And I did a couple errors, and Davey did some really cool stuff. And it was a really cool kind of thing that we got to share together. And, but I admire that he really, really stuck with it. And I think he deserves a lot of credit as well. And he got a lot of credit. He did. He definitely, of all the Californians, he probably might have gotten more credit than Kevin. I do recognize that Kevin was doing some super cool errors and stuff too. And, you know, there's going back to mentioning like a lot of other names that I really think, you know, stuck with it and they kept pushing it. Johnny Futch was another guy that really pushed his errors at First Peak, getting that slingshot off the wedge, even like Bud Lamas as well.
So I remember watching Bud Lamas at Sebastian Inlet boosting backside ollies really high.
Well, I like to do a lot of aerials and stuff, but we've been trying to throw everything together.
Well, I was kind of working on that stuff, you know, and I made a few, and then later I got better at it, and it just extended from me doing a reel off the lip.
In the early 80s, Chris Klopf's amazing photos of Kevin Reed were all over Breakout magazine, a small California publication. All the photo editors at Surfer and Surfing magazine would not publish them. A new wave of local groms started getting above the lip, directly influenced by Kevin.
Steve Price. 2 feet above the lip and short distance. But he was proud of himself for landing every single one of them. And for an East Side surfer, surfing Pleasure Point, him and I used to go at it at Santa Mo's. He watched, he learned, he listened. Couldn't skate for shit, but hell of a surfer.
The cool thing about Kevin Reed is his quote, I do this for a living. I remember seeing that as a kid going, you can do this for a living?
Kevin Reed was a freak of talent, and he had his own way of doing things, and it blew people's minds.
Kevin Reed, Mr. Radical. So gnarly, so early on. First guy to ever do an aerial and land it on a surfboard. Let's face it, he was pure innovator. His name alone should be on everyone's lips when they talk about surfing or skateboarding.
Nobody skated like Kevin Reed. He had his own gig going on. Super innovative, stylish surf skater.
No, he just invented shit and just went for it, and suddenly he was doing it.
Kevin Reed was definitely ahead of the crowd and ahead of the pack. Why his name isn't known, I have no idea. It should be.
It was a controversial thing. Aerials were still not accepted, even into the, 83, 84. I mean, sure, you'd see some guys in the magazines, busting the air and doing them in a contest. Like there really wasn't at that time, that I know of, doing them in a contest so much. In 82, I did a couple at the OP Pro, but again, it was it wasn't something that I was it was just I don't want to really be known as only this,
Never saw anybody doing air. We were all practicing it. When I first did an air, I did an air before I'd even seen it. We were all going for airs. Look, the guy who was better at airs than what I was the guy Bud Lamas. There was another guy, I think his name was Reed from up in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin Reed.
Kevin Reed, yeah. See, Kevin, those guys were much better than me. They had good control of it. I was out of control in the air. I made some, I didn't make some. It was all about we were all just trying to get above the lip line and out, and our boards were always at the wrong angle, and, but we were landing them. We weren't landing all of them. And that's where the airs came from. I was the first guy in Australia doing it. First guy I ever saw do it was probably Bud Lamas.
The first guy who do proper airs in Brazil was Luiz Neguinho. Luiz Neguinho, probably early 80s, he was doing some airs, proper airs, launching, landing.
Então, em 82, eu já fazia esse tipo de manobra. Na época, o pessoal não entendia e achavam que não fazia parte do surf. E na época eu falava para os caras, o futuro vai ser isso, porque manobras na parede todo mundo faz. Vai chegar uma hora para você, na competição, se diversificar dos outros competidores, você vai ter que exceder esse limite e começar a voar e voltar para a onda. Na época eles tiravam sarro e achavam que não era isso. Hoje em dia sou o visionário, pai do aéreo, mas na época não era assim. Eu tive que catequizar os índios.
There's guy John McClure, Malibu guy, I recall, he started taking to the air. And then Potts got that Surfing Magazine cover, and it was a rad, super rad shot, and it was wow, it's aerials are here.
Aerials are probably the maneuver of the future. A lot of young guys these days are doing them, and I think they need a lot more work in it, and maybe in a few years they'll be recognized as a functional maneuver. It's really hard to explain how an aerial feels. I guess you just have to do one.
But I think if you were to ask him, I bet he would kind of have some similar stories as to what I'm saying about the airs are good for the right time and place,
I think an aerial is a functional maneuver if it's done in the right way. to do an aerial, you got to hit the lip before you can do an aerial. And guys like Matt Archibald and Bud Lamas do proper aerials because they use the lip to launch themselves off. I think a proper aerial has to be done with a lot of speed off the bottom, hit the lip and launch yourself off the lip.
His airs were all about power and woof, 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 boom. Yeah, pretty rad.
Martin Potter was one of my favorites, okay?
Power style surfing in with the new, like Kelly Slater and aerial stuff, Matt Archibald aerial stuff. I think you got to have a mixture of both.
So many names, you know, that picked up the ball and ran with it. And in fact, you know, when I was competing in Japan, they were starting to recognize, and I believe they were some of the first guys that started doing air shows, and they would have it as a sidebar event, and they would have air shows. Like at Nijima, they had an air show, and at Chiba, they started having air shows, and they were giving away pretty good prize money, and it was pretty cool. And not everybody was entering them. Willie Morris and Frohoff, Ted Robinson, Bud Lamas. Some of those are the names that kind of come to mind that were like, you know, wanting to do airs and events and pushing it.
How about McCrannles?
Yeah, Scott McCrannles too, for sure. He was an incredible vert rider. And yeah, McCrannles used to do some of those air show events as well in Japan.
By the mid-'80s, air surfing, although still seen as a sideshow, was working its way into surfing's collective consciousness. A few were starting to land some in their heats, and a new breed of free surfers were emerging who took over the magazines and would change surfing forever. We will dive in deep in Chapter 2 of the history of aerial surfing, here on Real Surf Stories.
The future of surfing is going to be definitely based on how radical and how high you can get.
No limitation, hate anticipation. I choose to bring the real kid, squash the imitation. Most handy, up and get missing like John Candy. Inside edition, concept demanding. This is not the first, certainly not the last. Choke off the vibe like the crew that flew your cast. Offer to the window, dog in Nintendo. Reflow for concepts, results makes my pen blow. My styles come below, like Mr. Big's page out. Did your parents teach you not to fuck around with strangers? The three-face reservoirs of striking distance. On the mic existence, it's very hard for all types of pigeons. I make it rough like Final Four Duncan. Rhyme so fly, gotta land them out at Lunkin. Airport, or greater Cincinnati. Excel like the accelerator on a 9-quad caddy.
Who's next on the steel? You gotta come real. Who's next on the steel? You gotta come real. Who's next on the steel? You gotta come real. Who's next on the steel? You gotta come real. Back in the days, what? I've been around since tortoise shells and fossils. Homeless and felonious, I rock the era apostle. My crew is like an old funky sock. Slow down and dirty like Billy from the Bronx. The South, what? 161st.
You want me to paddle out and show you how it's done? Or we'll just move this contest to Rivermouth. This way you all have a chance. I didn't surf in it, I'm a judge. Second air show, moved it from the lane during storm to Santa Maria. And watch Ratty show everybody how it's done.